This is the next video about conceptual essay writing, and it's going to focus on planning and composing. In previous videos we looked at an overview of the conceptual essay, what it is, what it assesses and what you need to include. We also looked at the thesis and question and the relationship between those. In this video and the next one we'll look at how you plan a paragraph and turn that into your response, as well as why we use this particular structure that I'm going to go through. As I go through the slides, keep in mind that this process puts a lot of emphasis on planning exactly what you intend on saying so that you don't end up waffling, but you have everything you need to be able to adapt your response to any question you might get in an exam. The structure we'll be using is a little different to what you might be used to. Chances are you've used the TEAL acronym before, where TEAL is the topic sentence, the first E is an explanation of the topic sentence, the second E is an example, and the L is a link to the topic. This isn't the only way TEAL is defined. In the second example, the example goes before the explanation, which means that you explain the example rather than the topic sentence. Then the link is on the question rather than the topic. You'll probably find a whole range of variations. These are just two of them. The acronym we'll be using is a little different because it asks you to focus on certain elements that are needed in an English conceptual essay. Let's have a look. It has more parts to make sure you include everything you need. So in this structure, the S is for statement, and that needs to be a concept statement. If you want more information on concept statements, there is a more detailed explanation in a separate video. The most important thing to remember is that you need to focus on concepts rather than on a topic. The body of the paragraph is then organised into two main parts, the textual evidence and the evaluation. The textual evidence consists of the technique, the example and the analysis. The real difference in this structure is that the link is not the topic sentence or the question, but instead it is a link back to the thesis. While it might look a little overwhelming at first, there is not a great deal of difference. Because all three acronyms still follow the same basic paragraph structure of statement, evidence, link. The feature of this structure that stands out from the others is that this basic paragraph structure is mapped onto the question, the text, and the thesis. If there's one thing you need to remember, it's that your response should start with the question, then work through the text to get to the thesis. Quite often, you'll find that one example from the text is not enough to fully support your idea in any paragraph. So we tend to use this second structure that includes two pieces of textual evidence, which means that the TEAE is repeated. So you have two techniques, two examples, two analysis, and two evaluations, which means two complete pieces of textual evidence. And all of this is, of course, tied together with a link. Just to briefly go through each of these elements. When you compose a concept statement, you make a statement focused on ideas developed in response to the unit or module. You then support that with textual evidence. That textual evidence includes identifying the technique used in the example from the text, providing the example that uses the technique you've identified, explaining how the technique influences the meaning of or response to the example, and then explaining why the evidence you've provided is significant to your argument about the concept and/or the composer's purpose. Once you've repeated that, you link to your thesis, where you create a link between your evaluation of the textual evidence and your thesis. It's also helpful at this point to show how a paragraph fits into the essay as a whole. Remember that your goal is to prove that your thesis is an answer to the focus provided by the question. You support that with conceptual evidence, which is then broken down into a series of logical steps. The essence of each of those steps is captured in a concept statement. You then use your textual evidence to support each concept statement. Once you understand this, you'll see why writing an effective conceptual essay in English is far more than just explaining what the text is about. In the next video, I'll go through the process of planning and actually writing one of these paragraphs.